Greetings, BlazeLeeDragon here, and today I am going to be talking about Buddhism, which was a video request that I had received from a young lady by the name of Silver. So Silver, shout out to you, thank you for the video request. Now, with all videos that I do, I am no expert. I am actually just sharing my opinions and things that I have learned in research. So again, the accuracy of this video is speculative at best, and of course do some more research. So let's talk about Buddhism itself and some of the origins of Buddhism, where it came from and how it's developed and grown, and the different types of paths people have picked up and made their own with Buddhism. So originally, Buddhism actually goes back to India. It goes back to a specific Hindu priest by the name of Siddhartha Gautama, and I might be pronouncing his name wrong, so I do apologize. But apparently this prince lived back in either the 6th or 4th century BCE, and he pretty much, from what I understand, there was a person who was like a stargazer and had come to him and told him that his purpose in life was to seek out enlightenment. So apparently he gave up all of his earthly possessions and riches and his status as a prince and decided to travel and to share teachings of enlightenment. So supposedly that is where it begins. That is what I understand the beginning to be. The accuracy, again, like I said, is I guess it just depends on who you speak to. Now, he is often referred to as the first Buddha. Something to understand about Buddhism is something that's fairly commonplace among all the different versions of Buddhism, is that there are no deities or gods in Buddhism. This is not to say that you can't adapt to Buddhist teachings and still believe in your deities. This is just to say that Buddhism itself does not teach the worship of deities. Buddha is a state of being. It means to be enlightened or awakened. Now, a lot of people sit here and they'll think, oh, well, in Buddhism, Buddha's their god. That's not the case. Anyone can become a Buddha, ultimately, over time, and becoming awakened. I mean, that's their goal. That's the point of Buddhism, is to become a Buddha. Again, like I said, that is a state. A person becomes a Buddha. It's a state of being. It's something that can be obtained. It's not necessarily a single being or a single Buddha. The statues themselves are representations of one of the more famous Buddhas, which I believe that one is actually Bodhidharma or Talmo, as he's called in China. Now, with Siddhartha, he was like I said, the original Buddha, but there were other Buddhas, like I mentioned just now. Bodhidharma was also a Buddha. And that's, like I said, usually, and we'll talk about him a little bit later, and I'll show a few pictures that I had found that show pictures of him, and I'll tell a little bit about his story, because one of the Chan Buddhists that I know actually told me about the story of Talmo, and again, more research that I did, books that I read, and I was able to confirm that this was a pretty consistent story, although there are slight alterations and differentiations depending on who you talk to. So it's kind of interesting how things change, but this is true about any path, spiritual, religious, or anything. So what makes Buddhism Buddhism? There are some key factors such as the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and the seeking of Buddhahood, basically, is pretty consistent across the board, as well as not teaching deity worship. There is a state of being that people try to achieve, which is called Nirvana. Now, Nirvana roughly means basically like blown out. And what I mean by that is, like, if you think of a candle, the candle flame itself has heat and it has light radiating off from it, and it is destroying the candle and burning it down and using it as fuel. If you blow out a candle, there is a moment when the candle is blown out that there's complete emptiness and stillness. There's no heat, there's no fire, it's all dissipating. The destruction of that candle has ceased to be, and there is a state of nothingness. And that, from what I understand, is what Nirvana is, and that is what is sought by most Buddhists. Now, the way that you go about it depends on the tradition that you're talking about, and we'll talk about some of those too. One of the things that is part of the tradition when it comes to Buddhism is a shared belief among many, again, not all, everyone's an individual, is karma. Now, everyone has heard of karma before, I'm sure. It's a term that's used a lot. Oh, well, karma's a bitch, and karma will kick your ass. Well, the understanding of what karma is going to be different based upon the person, depends on the background they come from. Of course, Westerners will often throw it around as like this avenging force, this you do something bad and you're going to get your ass kicked. You do something good and good things are going to happen to you. Well, in different traditions, and specifically with Buddhism, karma, from what I understand, is kind of like a bank account. And everything that you do that is good puts positive money, additive into this bank account. And everything that you do is bad subtracts from it. So your entire life, karma doesn't do anything. Oop, hitting the microphone. Your entire life, karma doesn't do anything to affect you in this individual life. Karma is for your rebirth, from what I understand. And that's basically when you die, your checks and balances are weighed. And in order to buy your way up into the next evolutionary rebirth pattern, you have to have enough karma. If not, you go back down the tier. And I don't know the whole tier because it seems there's a lot of different opinions on what they are. But essentially, you go through different types of lives to grow and develop and to become one, to obtain, the state of Nirvana, to be part of everything, that there's this connectionness, and you no longer have to be reborn because there's no teachings left for you to learn here necessarily, because you are a part of everything. Now, again, the actual levels and the states and stuff like that, it's going to vary, and it's depending on who you speak to, but essentially that's what karma is. The goal is to have enough positive karma in order to be able to go up that chain. And if you, of course, like I said, if you go down, then you have another lifetime and another chance to try to climb back up. So that's the way I understand karma to be. It's not necessarily perfect, and I'm sure that there are those out there who are going to be like, no, you're wrong, and this is what karma really is. But take it for what it is. The next thing I want to talk about is, there's a picture of Siddhartha right down there. I'm sorry, I was going to throw that up sooner when I was talking about Siddhartha. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the Four Noble Truths. This is an image I got from Google, so yay Google. No, actually this one was from Bing. The Siddhartha one was from Google. See, I'm not on my game today. So in this one here, we want to talk about the Four Noble Truths, and we want to talk about the Eightfold Path. So the Four Noble Truths, as you see, that are listed here, is life has inevitable suffering. The second one, there is a cause to our suffering. The third one, there is an end to our suffering. And then the fourth one, the end to suffering is contained in the Eightfold Path. So basically it's focusing on suffering, which is kind of a little bit off, because usually I believe the word, and I wrote it down, so reference, dukkha. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right because I don't speak the language, but dukkha, from the way that it is roughly translated, it could be suffering, it could be anxiety, it could be being unsatisfied, it could be at unease. It is basically a state where you're not comfortable and you're not relaxed, so you're worked up for whatever reason. So it can be many, many, many things can be dukkha, so you can actually put that in the place of this particular picture that I found. The point is, it's something we don't want. We don't want to be anxious, we don't want to be angry, we don't want to be upset, we don't want to be hurting or suffering. So the Four Noble Truths is to realize this, that if you are alive and you are living, you are going to have this dukkha, this pain, this suffering, and that there is a cause to it. It doesn't just happen. There's something that's making it happen. And you need to know for the third one that it can end. It doesn't have to go on. How do you end it? The fourth one, which is the Eightfold Path. So let's talk about the Eightfold Path. And again, everyone's a little bit different. Everyone's got a little bit of different opinion and stuff like that, but let's see if I can zoom in on this just a little bit more. Nope, it's going to be a pain. Okay, so the Eightfold Path, basically, it's a wheel cycle. They're all of equal importance. It's not like a stepping program. It's not something that you work up through. You try to obtain all of them at one time and try to balance them out. So there's right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness. And this is a very rough overview diagram. Again, another image I had found off of Bing, just to kind of share with you guys to get an idea and have a visual there. Each one of these, that there is a specific way of being that will ultimately end your suffering and your pain in this world. And it's kind of a recipe. And again, depending on the path of Buddhism that you are talking about, the way that you go about it, and what is actually filled into each of these categories seems to vary from what I've seen and understood. But the point is, like, right view is try to see what really is there, you know, the right intention. Why are you doing your actions? Do your actions for a good reason, not for selfish purposes. The right speech. Words are powerful. You can cut into people, you can cut people down, you can make people suicidal, you can pump them up. Words are very powerful, so to use those the right way. Right actions. What you're actually doing. Are you physically getting up and helping other people, or are you causing them harm or getting in their way? Again, the actions that you're doing. Livelihood. What are you doing in life? Do you fight for a living? Are you like an ultimate fighter, or are you slaughtering cattle, or what are you doing in this world? The actual livelihood that you do should be in sync with the path that you're trying to follow. So that's usually why they say with the livelihood, you don't want to make your living necessarily as an assassin or a killer. And I'm not trying to tell people how to live. I'm just saying with the eightfold path, that's what they're trying to say, is be aware of what you're doing for a living and what you are contributing to this world. Right effort. Are you putting forth a genuine effort to resist doing things that are bad? I mean, temptations are going to come at you, but are you really trying, or you're like, I'll just kind of let it pass? Really focus your effort. Concentration. This is done through what is often called meditation. There are many different ways of calling this practice, but meditation is the most common that we use, and it actually has its origins, from what I understand, in India. Right mindfulness. Again, control your thoughts. What's going on in your head? So not just the actions that you're doing or the things that you're saying or the way that you live your life, but get your mind clear. Focus on the good things. You try to separate yourself from these bad thoughts. That's the basic essence, as I understand it, of the Eightfold Path. So moving along, there are 3 marks of existence apparently in Buddhism, and again, I wrote these down because I'd never even heard about these before. These I actually found online. And that is that there are multiple pieces to all of existence. It's not just one thing happening at a time. There's all these little micro particles that exist that make things happen. So it's not just one thing and, hey, it's a snowball rolling downhill. No, there's a gradual build to things. The suffering part, of course, there is suffering. And then, of course, the non-self. There is no I. Everything that happens, it's not happening to you, it's happening to all things. There is a connectivity between life and existence. And if an event or occurrence happens, it's just happening. It's not happening to you. There is no self. Moving along. Okay, cool picture. Actually, I could have brought that up. So I want to talk about some of the different types of Buddhism. And again, I wrote these down because I have not even heard of all these, and I've not met people that have practiced all of these. I've only met a few that practice 1 or 2 of these. So let's talk about the 2 main schools that people talk about when it comes to Buddhism, and that is, again, might butcher the way these are pronounced, Theravada and Mahayana. Might be pronouncing those wrong, but those are the 2 main schools, it seems, are the 2 main thought forms of Buddhism, and they have different ways that they try to practice, that they try to teach their students. I've also heard, getting some water, mouth getting dry, I've also heard from my Shifu, who practices Chan Buddhism, that he was actually speaking about that there is what's called large vehicle Buddhism and small vehicle Buddhism. And the difference with those 2 schools of thoughts, and that might refer to these, I don't know enough about these to speak about them other than mentioning their names, is that large vehicle Buddhism is under the understanding that you literally have to be giving up things in life, becoming like a monk, and living with a group of practitioners that are all Buddhists, that are all striving for the same thing. And the purpose behind this is that in order to really follow that Eightfold Path and to really embrace the path to Nirvana and to follow these 4 Noble Truths, is to pull yourself out of society and go into this big form, and everyone is doing the same thing you are, so your clear path and opening your mind, it's all done together, it's all smooth together. This is the large vehicle, it's like a big bus, everyone's going together, everyone's doing it together and encouraging each other. Small vehicle Buddhism, the way he explained it to me, was basically that you as an individual can follow and practice and obtain this even in the world that we live in. And these are individuals like yourself, perhaps, that are watching this video that want to pick up Buddhist teachings and incorporate it into your life as it is. So you're doing it as an individual. You realize that you don't need this big group. You don't need others to help guide you. You are going to guide yourself, so to speak, and you're going to find that enlightenment within. And that was actually one of the big teachings for Talmo, but we'll get into Talmo in a second. Hey, no barking. Hold on, I'm doing a video. Dog in the background. So the other forms of Buddhism, there are Pure Land Buddhism. There is Zen Buddhism, which is practiced in Japan. There is a Chinese version of Zen, which is called Chan Buddhism. There is a Korean version of Zen, which is, I might be pronouncing these wrong again, Seong Buddhism, which apparently Zen is also the word that they'll sometimes use in Korea as well. There is Tibetan Buddhism. There is Shingon Buddhism, and then there is Tiantai Buddhism. Again, some of those I might have mispronounced. Zen and Chan are the only ones that I know I'm pronouncing right. So there's many different versions. So why are there all these different versions, you know? It's just because these teachings traveled around. Here's some pictures right here of some Tibetan Buddhists. And, you know, a lot of people think of the Buddhists shaving their heads. That's not always the case. Actually, Tibetan Buddhists don't shave their heads. There is Talmo that I was telling you about, also known as Bodhidharma. And he was, I believe he was like 400 or 500 years after Siddhartha, and he is considered a Buddha. He actually brought the teachings to China. And it was interesting because he was trying to talk to the emperor and trying to get permission to build a Buddhist temple, and the emperor supposedly refused him. So he stayed there anyway, and eventually he ended up talking the emperor of China into allowing him to build a temple. So what they did is they went into the Hunan province and they clear-cut this mountain of all their trees and built this brand new temple, and then they planted these little baby trees outside, which is where it got its name from. Which is Young Forest Temple. The way that you say it in Mandarin is Shaolin Si. So the Shaolin Temple itself was apparently started by Talmo. I believe in Cantonese it's Silam instead of Shaolin, but it means young forest because, you know, they clear-cutted the trees and they planted new ones. Now, from the way I understand it, is either there was the group of Buddhists and he left and then came back, or he started the Shaolin Temple, left, and came back to check on the Shaolin Temple. I forget at what time it happened, but what I do know from my research is that Talmo went to China to introduce Buddhism. People started practicing Buddhism and reading. When he came back, he found that they were all basically corrupted. They were heavy and they were overweight, and they basically were just kind of, you know, doing whatever they felt like doing. This kind of really bothered Talmo. He's like, you know, I just taught you guys all this stuff. You know, this is a picture of some Shaolin monks. There are a difference between the fighting monks and the scholar monks. So when he came back and they were all out of shape and stuff, it's like, you guys aren't getting the purpose of this. They were gambling and getting prostitutes and all sorts of horrible things. So Talmo got mad and he went off into the mountains and he meditated and stared at a wall. And this is where the stories vary depending on which person you talk to. I heard one thing from my Shifu. There's a Chicago Shaolin Temple. I had spoken with one of them there. This doesn't speak for everyone at Shaolin there, but each one of them, the story is slightly different. But it varies from he sat and lived in this cave and meditated, and he did this for years, and supposedly one story is he bore a hole into the mountain by staring and concentrating for so long. But basically, because he was so disgusted by the practices that they were doing, they kept coming to him, which is what you see here in this picture, and they were basically begging him to, hey, teach us, you know, we're worthy, and begging him to be taught. And none of them seemed to understand it. So he refused. One story goes that one of the monks came to him and cut off his own arm and offered it to him as kind of like a tribute of saying, hey, please. This, of course, turned Talmo back to the temple and started teaching them Buddhism again, and introduced to them what I understand to be the I Ching Ching postures, which is essentially a yogi practice. It was kind of a meditative breathing, kind of extreme yoga. Now, again, yogi and yogas, that is often used in Buddhism, but not always, and that's a different video for future to talk about yoga. But I at least wanted to mention that these muscle change postures that he introduced to the Shaolin Temple, and of course they added that with what they already had for their Chinese martial arts, and they mixed them together, and that's where we have the muscle change postures of today, from what I understand. Now, the other version of the story is that Talmo had said that he would refuse to teach until the snow fell red. So the monk cut off his arm and whipped it around over his head, spraying blood, which hit the snowflakes and they fell red. So there's many different versions, but the point is he cut off his own arm. So that's why you'll see often in Chan Buddhism that they will only have one hand up instead of two. They'll either put one hand behind their back, or they'll have it off to the side, or they'll have it underneath and knock over the microphone. But the reason that they do this is in salute to the monk who got Talmo to start teaching them again. And Talmo saw that this person was beyond his physical body, that he was willing to cut off his arm. It's nothing. I am still a person. I'm still alive. I can still obtain enlightenment. So he saw that. And I think it might be more symbolic than an actual story, but I don't know. I don't know how true it is, but it is a story that is told for the Chan Buddhism. Now, there's also Zen Buddhism, and this is a Zen Buddhist that is sitting down, and of course, like I said, this is from Japan. But it's interesting that when you talk about a Zen Buddhist versus a Chan Buddhist versus one of the other types of Buddhism, because when you start talking about Zen Buddhism, Chan Buddhism, and Seong Buddhism, again, that's the Korean version, S-E-O-N, I don't know if proper pronunciation, that these are actually becoming a lot more popular than some of the other forms of Buddhism that I had mentioned, and that's because they focus more on meditation than they do on the Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths. And that is to say that when you are meditating, the point is that you are emptying your mind and you're trying to obtain an awareness. And there are two main thought processes, and the one is that you are trying to solve a riddle. You're letting your mind work, and you're thinking, and you're trying to empty yourself out of normal thoughts and try to work through the riddle of life. And that is one form of meditation. Now, the form of meditation that I was trained in is the one that my Shifu taught me, and that is what is often referred to as just sitting. There is no goal. There is no ultimate purpose. You are literally going to breathe, sit, and empty your mind. And that is also a very, very, very popular practice for many people. And the idea is that you can achieve this state of oneness, this nirvana, and you can do this through just sitting and just being. You take yourself and remove yourself from the normal world and just become. This is also a very, very popular practice in Taoism. And I don't want to talk too much about Taoism, but again, in Chan Buddhism itself, it's not just Buddhism. It is China's version of Buddhism that is mixed together with Confucianism, Taoism, and different practices that are there in China. Same thing with Zen Buddhism. There are influences of Shinto into Zen Buddhism, because you bring it into a new culture, you're going to have differences. Just like in Tibetan Buddhism, it's going to be influenced by their culture. Here in America, practitioners that consider themselves Buddhists, there are these new influences, there are these new things that you're going to interact with in your own world that are going to pull you into it. So, interestingly enough, in Taoism, again, in the Chinese practice of Taoism, we're talking Wu Wei Wu Bu Wei, which essentially means action through non-action. You are literally allowing things to occur without your influence, because things will naturally work themselves out. They are trying to achieve what's called a state of pu, or natural naturalness. This is kind of like if you think of uncut wood. A log out in the forest, it is just naturally there. That is its natural state without human intervention. So it's very similar to what is being sought here in trying to obtain the state of nirvana. So when we talk about Chan Buddhism, you're going to see those influences. They're very, like I said, they're universal, and it almost has the ultimate goal of just trying to obtain emptiness. So if you're thinking about becoming a Buddhist or incorporating practices, you can take some of these teachings and incorporate them now. You don't have to go out there and become a monk. You don't have to shave your head. You don't have to become a vegetarian. And that's actually interesting. Actually, as far as I know, not all Buddhists are vegetarian. That was just one or two practices. Like in even in the Shaolin, some of them were vegetarian, but not all of them. And a lot of them today, from what I understand, are not vegetarian. It's just one way of looking at it. And the reason some of them do practice vegetarianism, from what I understand, how you're living your life, the action that you're doing. You are killing a living creature to ingest it. You're eating the dead. So you're causing this harm, so that's bad to many of them. So again, it's all about that thought concept and the direction of your thoughts and your effort and your will and your actions. It all depends on what you want to do. So anyway, my name is BlazeLeeDragon. I want to thank you for watching. Please thumb up, like, and subscribe. Feel free to leave some feedback in the comments. Maybe send me some video requests. But I appreciate you watching and hopefully you learned something.